The Chinese government has a history of overreacting and heavy-handedly crack down any political dissent, whether it's conducted through writing, whether it's conducted through, expressed through demonstrations, which is guaranteed. By the way, Communist China has a constitution, and the Chinese constitution clearly provides all those guarantees, including freedom of speech, freedom of assembly. And when the Uyghurs started this, of course, the events in Guangdong province sparked the ideas coming together to express the grievances, because the Uyghurs asked for the government to respond, asked government to investigate, but it didn't happen, and all the frustrations, stress, and humiliation add to it, and they made the Uyghurs to say, okay, it's time, let's do it.
Nuri, I gather at first the Chinese government did try to diffuse tensions and take a perspective of let's examine the events. They weren't so directly condemning of the Uyghurs initially. I think there was initially an effort to try to diffuse the situation, wasn't there?
Well, there was a one-handed, one-sided way of handling the events in Guangdong province. I don't know the latest status, but the over 100 workers who used to work at this toy factory still being held in this undisclosed location. The Guangdong province and the Xinjiang provincial government had an obligation to investigate and address the issues, and if they did that, this could have been avoided.
Well, Walter, we've got a question that came in from, I should say that President Hu Jintao released this statement following the unrest. This is what he said. We should bear this in mind, that the Han people cannot be separated from minorities, and minorities cannot be separated from the Han people. And minorities are inseparable from each other either. All the officials and ordinary people should cherish the great atmosphere of all the minorities working, preparing and developing together. Now, it sounds like at least some attempt from the President to create some kind of unity, to try and create a national unity signal.
Well, I mean, that's classic Chinese propaganda, basically. I mean, that's the myth of the Chinese state. I think wholly inaccurate, especially as regards Tibet and in regards Xinjiang province. You know, I think one thing that ought to be looked at in all of this is that the sort of events that happen in Guangdong, and indeed on some scale what happened in Xinjiang, happens thousands of times a year all over China. And what you really have to look at is why, in this case, has it been the interest of the Chinese to publicize it? Why in this case? And I think it's because of the nature of the ethnicity. It has to do with their religion. It has to do with something that they think that they can plug into the concerns of the rest of the world and take care of a problem that they've been trying to take care of for decades.
How realistic is that comparison between Tibet and what's happening in Xinjiang?
I think it's realistic. I think outside of China, the Tibet issue has a much more profile, a lot more interest in what happens in Tibet. There's a lot of romanticism around Tibet. The American relationship with Tibet goes back decades and is very critical to that as well. But I think you could get the same sort of dynamic develop in Xinjiang. Rabia Kadir, a good example of someone that could be made into an international icon.
Right.
The Chinese seem to be doing their best to turn her into an international icon.
One other thing, if I may, that resulted this incident was a simple analogy. You can send thousands and millions of Han Chinese workers to our homeland and marginalizing us and making us continue to be a minority on our homeland, whereas you will not even allow this several hundred Uyghurs working peacefully in Guangdong province. What's wrong with that? So the people had a hard time to swallow that reality.
Well, let's get Muley, who's on the line from the UK. Muley, what would you like to ask?
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Well, I'm a real, I thought Mao Zedong had a very good philosophy regarding minorities. Why this Chinese government, the current government, is not respecting minorities' rights, particularly in China at this moment, and also in Sri Lanka they gave serious military aid to crush minority Tamils.
Okay.
Why this Chinese government at the moment not respecting minority rights?
Muley, let me ask Nuri then, do you feel there's been a change over a period of time, and that perhaps the government, the Chinese government in more recent years has changed its approach to minorities, or has this been a long-running thing?
I'd like to illustrate that describing my own life. I'm originally from China. I came here 15 years ago. When I grew up, of course we didn't have political freedom. We didn't have economic freedom, but we had certain level of religious freedom and cultural freedom. No one bothered if I participated in any religious activities. No one bothered if government officials participated in religious activities. There was no sign hanging on the mosques of the Uyghur region stating that the children under 18 and women not allowed to go to the mosque to pray. And also the Uyghur language was still in practice, used, and I grew up speaking and being educated in the Uyghur language, but that has long gone. You know, the policies are so brutal, it's affecting everybody's life.
So something did change?
Yes, it changed gradually and getting worse, unfortunately.
I'm going to ask you both to stand by because we're going to take a short break here now. As we pause, let me remind you, you can join in the conversation with your questions and comments by logging on to livestation.com and entering the chat room where you can see there's a debate taking place right now. We're also taking a poll in the chat room where we're asking, is control of national resources in Xinjiang province a key reason for the conflict between Han Chinese and the Uyghur minority in the region? Let us know what you think. We'll be back after this short break.